She was rain on my skin after years of drought. She wasn't supposed to look at me like that, not with eyes that carried both calm and danger in the same breath. Yet there she was, standing near the window, her reflection caught between glass and evening light, making everything else in the room forget its place. I'd seen her before, a few times, in passing. Always collected. Always a little distant. But tonight something about the quiet made it impossible to pretend she was just another face. Her hair was still damp from the drizzle outside, loose strands curling against her neck. The scent of rain mixed with her perfume, soft, grounding, impossible to name. I told myself not to stare, but the space between us kept daring me. She turned slightly, caught me watching. "You're quiet," she said, her voice low but steady, like she already knew I had no good reason for being there except her. "I'm just—" I started, but the words stopped. Because she'd smiled, barely, almost like she didn't mean to. It wasn't the kind of smile you give out of politeness. It was the kind that made your chest tighten before your brain caught up. Her eyes drifted toward the table between us. A cup of untouched coffee sat there, steam long gone cold. "You make coffee and never drink it?" she teased softly, but her gaze didn't leave mine. "Maybe I was waiting," I said. "For what?" I hesitated. The rain outside filled the silence for me. The sound of it against the glass was too intimate, like the world was leaning closer just to listen. "For you to ask that," I said finally. Her breath caught, barely audible, but real. She looked away, brushing her thumb along the edge of her sleeve. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "Not to me." "Why not?" Her silence said more than any words could. The distance between us wasn't just space. It was age, experience, hesitation, things that could ruin people if handled carelessly. But when she moved, walking past me toward the bookshelf, the air seemed to follow her. I caught the faintest touch of her arm against mine. Accidental? Maybe. Maybe not. My pulse betrayed me either way. She stopped halfway, her back still turned. "You're staring again," she said without looking. "I'm trying not to." She exhaled, slow and tired, but there was something else in it, not frustration, not quite amusement. Something quieter. "You're too young to look at someone the way you do," she said. "Like you already know how the ending goes." I wanted to say I didn't care about endings. That some moments were worth breaking rules for. But instead, I just took a step closer, not enough to touch, but enough that I could see the tiny droplets of rain still clinging to her hair. The smell of her perfume felt like it lived in the air itself. My throat went dry. I wanted to ask what she was thinking, but I already knew. She turned finally, slow, careful, and for the first time, didn't step back. "Don't," she whispered. But her eyes said something different. Outside, the thunder rolled again. The light flickered once. And then, a knock on the door. Neither of us moved. Her gaze broke away first, lips parted like she'd been about to say something that would change everything. Instead, she only whispered, almost to herself, "You should get that." But my feet didn't move. Because the truth was, the knock didn't matter. The rain didn't matter. Nothing did. Not anymore. To be continued, the knock faded, but the silence it left behind stayed, heavier than before. She didn't turn back right away. Her hand rested on the edge of the table, her knuckles pale against the dark wood. For a second, I thought she might tell me to leave. Instead, she just said quietly, "You shouldn't make a habit of moments like this." Her voice sounded steadier than she looked. I wanted to ask what she meant, but maybe I already knew. Later, when she finally sat down across from me, her eyes seemed far away. She stared at the rain streaking down the window. "I used to love storms," she said. "When I was younger, I'd stand outside and let it soak through my clothes. My mother said it made me reckless." "Maybe it made you alive," I said. That made her smile, but only for a second. "No. Just naive. I thought everything that made my heart race was worth chasing." She glanced at me then, And I knew that line wasn't just about her past. There it was, the invisible line neither of us had drawn but both of us saw. The years between us, the stories she had already lived through, the ones I was only beginning to understand. She picked up her cup finally, the one gone cold, and took a small sip anyway. "You're different," she said softly. "Too observant. You make silence feel like confession." I laughed quietly, trying to hide how much her words shook me. "That's not always a bad thing. Maybe not for you." She leaned back slightly, her fingers brushing along the handle of her cup. "But for someone like me, it's dangerous." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I didn't know whether to move closer or stay perfectly still. Every small motion she made seemed deliberate, the way her hand brushed back her hair, how her eyes darted away when I caught her looking. I tried to speak, but words felt too sharp for the quiet. My hand rested on the table near hers, not touching, just there. Close enough that I could feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin. Her eyes flicked to our hands, then to my face. I thought she would pull back. Instead, she left her hand there, still, poised, but trembling slightly. The rain outside slowed, but my heartbeat didn't. "People would talk," she said suddenly, her tone more fragile than firm. "If they saw us like this." "Let them," I whispered before I could stop myself. Her breath caught, and that one sound said everything, every fear, every hesitation, every secret one she tried to bury. She stood up, pacing toward the window, arms folded as though she could hold herself together. "You don't understand. You're 22. You can still make mistakes and laugh about them later." I rose slowly, stopping behind her. "And you can't?" Her reflection met mine in the glass, two blurred figures standing too close to pretend they weren't drawn together. "Not the same way," she said, almost to the rain outside. A drop of water traced down the window, mirroring the way her fingers traced the sill. Without thinking, I reached out, just enough for my hand to rest lightly against her arm. She didn't move. Her skin was warm, softer than I expected. Her breath hitched, barely audible, but real. For a moment, we stood there, caught between what we wanted and what we shouldn't. Her eyes closed, as though surrendering to something she couldn't name. When she finally looked at me again, there was no smile this time, just quiet understanding. "Don't make me feel alive again," she whispered. And yet, she didn't step away. The next afternoon felt different, quieter, heavier. The kind of quiet that hums beneath the surface, like a secret waiting to be noticed. I stopped by with something trivial, a folder she'd forgotten, an excuse so thin it almost embarrassed me. She opened the door halfway, her expression unreadable at first, then softening into that faint half-smile I'd started to crave. "You didn't have to bring that," she said. "I know," I replied. But the words tangled before they left my mouth. She stepped aside, letting me in. The faint scent of rain still lingered from the night before, mingled with coffee and something faintly floral. Her sweater hung loose on her shoulders, sleeves pushed up, her hair pinned carelessly like she'd been too tired to care. It should have been ordinary. It wasn't. The space between us was small. Too small. Every movement carried weight. The way her hand brushed past mine as she reached for the folder, the way her eyes lingered when she tried not to. "I've been thinking," she said finally, setting the folder down on the counter. "Maybe we've been careless." "Careless?" She turned toward me, the distance closing almost without notice. Whatever this is, people talk. You know how they can be. I don't care what people say." "Well, I do." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. They twisted at the edge of the counter, as if holding on for balance. "I've had enough of whispers in my life." For a long moment neither of us spoke. Just the sound of her slow breath, the faint ticking of the clock, and the pulse in my throat. She finally looked up, really looked. "You make things complicated." "Maybe things were already complicated," I said. A faint smile tugged at her lips, but it didn't last. She stepped closer, maybe too close. Her perfume was faint, something warm, like vanilla and memory. I could see the flecks of gold in her eyes. I didn't mean to move, but I did. My hand brushed her arm, light enough that I could pretend it was an accident. She didn't move away. The air shifted, denser, charged. She whispered, "You shouldn't look at me like that. Then stop standing so close." Her breath caught, a small, betraying sound. The kind that pulls you closer, even when you know you shouldn't. We stood there, inches apart. The rain outside began again, soft against the glass, the rhythm of something inevitable. And then, a sound. A knock at the door. We froze. Her eyes widened, the spell shattering. I stepped back instinctively, but the space between us still crackled, alive and dangerous. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breath. "Don't," she mouthed silently. The knock came again, louder this time. She forced a smile and went to answer it, her voice calm, almost too calm. A friend's voice drifted in, casual, unsuspecting. I should have left then. Should have. But when her friend turned to hang a coat in the other room, her eyes met mine again, one fleeting second, full of everything we couldn't say. She looked away first. And in that silence, something irreversible had already happened. When I finally left, she didn't stop me, but her fingers brushed mine at the door. Just once. Enough to promise what neither of us dared speak. We were already too close. It had been days since that knock at the door, days of pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. We spoke less now, and yet, somehow, thought of each other more. Each message delayed, each silence stretched too long. Until that evening. She texted asterisk, "Can you stop by? Just for a minute." Asterisk, I told myself I wouldn't go. Then I found myself standing outside her door again, the night colder than usual, my pulse louder than the city beyond. She opened it before I could knock, like she'd been waiting. Her eyes were tired, not from sleep, but from holding back. Inside, the lights were low. The rain hadn't started yet, but the smell of it was in the air, that electric stillness before a storm. "I shouldn't have called," she said, turning away. "But you did." She exhaled sharply, rubbing her arms. "You make everything harder than it should be." I stepped closer, my voice quiet. "Or maybe I just make it honest." Her laugh was soft, broken. "You think this is honesty? You're half my age and I'm—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "I'm supposed to know better. Maybe knowing better isn't the same as feeling less." That silenced her. The air between us pulsed. Her hand brushed her hair back, and I caught the faint tremor in her fingers. Before I could think, I reached out, gently, carefully, tucking a loose strand behind her ear. My hand lingered, and so did her breath. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared at me like she was trying to memorize the moment before she ruined it. "You should go," she whispered, though her body leaned closer, not away. "Say it like you mean it." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. My thumb grazed the edge of her jaw, warm, trembling, real. She closed her eyes for half a heartbeat, then opened them again. "This isn't fair," she said, voice barely holding steady. "You don't understand what this could cost. Then tell me to stop." Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. Outside, thunder rolled, distant but closing in. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. She took a slow step forward until her hand rested against my chest. My heartbeat answered before I could breathe. Her voice cracked, soft and trembling. "You think you want this, but if you knew what I've done, you wouldn't. Then tell me." She shook her head. "No. It's easier if you don't." I took her hand before she could pull away, my voice low, steady. "I don't want easy." Something broke in her then, or maybe it finally gave in. She looked up, eyes glistening in the dim light, lips parting as if to speak, or to close the distance. The world narrowed to that single breath between us, her perfume, her warmth, the soft press of her palm against my heart. And then, her phone buzzed on the counter. We both froze. She looked at the screen. The color drained from her face. I whispered, Who is it? She didn't answer. Just turned the phone face down, whispering, almost to herself. It's too late. Then she stepped back, her eyes full of everything she tried to hide. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if she meant too late to stop, or too late to save us. The silence after that message felt endless. She stood there, motionless, her fingers still resting on the phone as though afraid to move. The hum of the rain outside filled the room, soft but constant, like the world was waiting for her to speak. I didn't ask again. I just watched. The way her jaw tightened. The way her chest rose a little too fast. Finally she said, "It's my ex-husband." The words dropped heavy, but it wasn't the name that made me pause, it was how she said it. Not with anger, but with something closer to fear. "He's been asking questions," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "About who I've been spending time with. About you." I froze. "Me?" She nodded once, almost apologetically. "He saw us the other day. The coffee shop. Said it didn't look like just a conversation." The world tilted. The quiet, careful space we built suddenly felt fragile, like a secret made of glass. She rubbed her forehead, pacing a few steps. "I should have told you. I just didn't want to make it real." When she looked up, her eyes searched mine, guilty, scared, needing something she couldn't ask for. I stepped closer, instinct before thought. "He doesn't get to decide what this is." She laughed under her breath, bitter and small. "You think it's that simple?" Her hand brushed mine as she turned away, just the lightest touch, but it burned. She caught herself, pulling back too quickly, like the contact itself betrayed her. "Everything's complicated," she whispered. "I've lied to myself for months. About how I feel. About what I can handle. And now?" Her lips parted, trembling. "Now I can't pretend anymore." The air shifted, denser, heavier. My pulse thudded in my ears. She took a slow step toward me, eyes locked on mine, something raw and unguarded flickering there. I could see her wrestling with it, the need to run, the need to stay. Her voice dropped, barely audible. "You don't understand what I'd be risking. My reputation, my work, everything. Then why call me?" Her throat moved as she swallowed hard. "Because I couldn't stand not seeing you." The confession landed like thunder. She turned away, gripping the edge of the counter, shoulders trembling. The reflection of the streetlight caught the curve of her face, the loneliness there, the ache she tried to bury. I stepped up behind her, close enough to feel her warmth but not enough to touch. My voice came out low. "You don't have to hide it anymore." She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "You make it sound so easy." I leaned in, close enough for my breath to brush her ear. "It could be." Her hand reached back instinctively, fingers grazing mine, a small, helpless movement that said more than words ever could. Then, just as the moment tipped into something irreversible, she pulled away. Her voice trembled. "He's coming here tomorrow. To talk." I stared at her, heartbeat pounding. "About us?" She nodded, eyes wet, voice barely a whisper. "He already knows." And in that instant, with her confession still hanging in the air, everything that had felt like longing suddenly felt like danger. Still, when she finally looked at me, I knew one thing for certain: whatever happened next, either of us was walking away. The knock at the door came just after sunset, sharp, deliberate, final. She froze mid-step, her breath catching. The color drained from her face. "He's early," she whispered. For a moment I didn't move. The sound of rain outside filled the silence again, the same rain that had brought me here once before, but now it felt heavier, colder. I could have left. I should have. But she looked at me with something desperate in her eyes, the kind of plea that wasn't spoken but lived somewhere deep in the chest. "He just wants to talk," she said, as if convincing herself. "It'll be fine." I stepped closer, my voice low. "You don't believe that?" Her lips parted, but no words came. The air between us thickened, alive with everything we hadn't said. I could feel it, her fear, her hesitation, her longing, all tangled together. "He'll see your car," she murmured. "Then let him." That made her look up. Really look. Her eyes glistened, uncertain and alive. "You don't understand what that means for me." "I do," I said quietly. "And I'm still here." Something in her broke then, or maybe it finally gave in. She took one step forward, then another, until there was almost no space left. I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could hear the faint tremor in her breathing. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "But I already did." Her hand trembled when it touched my chest, a question, not a statement. The soft press of her palm made my pulse race. She looked down, then up again, her voice caught between defiance and surrender. "I've spent my whole life doing what's right," she said. "And it's never made me happy." I swallowed hard. "Then stop running from what you want." The room felt smaller now, the world shrinking to the space between us. The rain hit harder against the windows. I could smell her perfume, faint, floral, familiar, the scent that had followed me for weeks in dreams I couldn't admit to having. She leaned in just enough that I could feel her breath on my neck. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know what I'm offering," I said softly. Her hand moved from my chest to my face, hesitant, trembling. She brushed a strand of hair from my forehead, the touch so tender it hurt. Then, a second knock. Louder. Closer. She froze again. I could see her fighting it, every instinct telling her to step away. I reached up, my fingers grazing hers. "You don't have to answer." Tears welled in her eyes. "If I don't, he'll never stop." The third knock echoed like a warning. I caught her gaze, steady, unflinching. "Then let him see the truth." For a long, suspended heartbeat, we stood there, two people trapped between the life expected of them and the one they actually wanted. Finally, she took a breath that sounded like surrender. "Stay," she whispered. The handle turned from the other side. And as the door began to open, she didn't step away. She stayed right there, inches from me, her eyes locked on mine, unafraid now. Whatever came next, we'd already chosen. The rain had slowed to a mist by morning, a pale light slipping through the curtains. The storm that had raged all night had left everything quiet, too quiet, almost. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded, hair loose now, damp from the rain that had blown through the open window. For the first time in weeks, she didn't look composed or untouchable. She just looked real. "I thought I'd ruined everything," she said softly, staring at the floor. "For both of us." I shook my head. "You didn't." A faint smile tugged at her lips, small and tired. "You don't know what people will say." "I don't care what they say," I answered, more certain than I'd expected. "I care about what happens when you stop pretending you don't feel this." Her eyes lifted to mine, slow and hesitant, but there was something new there, something peaceful. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," I said. "But I'd rather fight for something real than hide behind what's safe." She leaned back, exhaling like she'd been holding that breath all night. The space between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm, like the air after lightning finally fades. "I was married for 20 years, she said after a moment. "I forgot what it felt like to be looked at, really looked at, without judgment, without expectation." I moved closer, close enough that our knees brushed. Her voice faltered, but she didn't pull away. "You look at me like I'm still worth wanting," she whispered. "You are." For a while, neither of us said anything. The world outside carried on, a car passing, a bird somewhere calling, but in here, everything stood still. I reached out, unsure, and she didn't stop me. My fingers found hers, and she let them stay. Her skin was warm, her pulse steady. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, something in her had softened, a quiet acceptance, not of me, but of herself. "This will change things," she said. "Maybe," I murmured, "but maybe it's time something did." She smiled then, a small, knowing curve of her lips that felt like the first sunrise after a long storm. "You really don't know what you're getting into." I chuckled softly. "I think I do." Her hand tightened around mine. Then don't let go. I didn't. We sat there for a long time, her head resting lightly against my shoulder, the faint rhythm of her breathing syncing with mine. The silence wasn't awkward anymore, it was full, alive, almost sacred. When she finally spoke again, her voice was calm. It's strange, she said. How something that felt like a mistake now feels like the only thing that makes sense. Maybe that's how we know it's real, I said. She turned, brushed a soft kiss against my forehead, and whispered, Then let's not waste it. The rain outside had stopped completely. Sunlight spilled across her face, warm and quiet, the kind of light that doesn't ask for permission. And for the first time, either did we.